Hello everyone, I am Mahesh and I'm a senior test automation architect with 14 plus years of experience in the software test automation. I got approved one patent and another in queue. Now in my current role, I explore new technologies and tools in the market. I introduce them to our best processes and bring values to the organization, also providing technical architecture, then defining strategic direction for testing automation practices, then serving as an expert in defining and rolling out standard automation frameworks, and in line with the latest industry trends like complex architecture, scriptless automation, then participate in the application design reviews, ensuring quality automation practices, example of your test pyramid, like your TDD, BDD culture, and are baked in the software development and deployment lifecycle. This is what my current role. Now, I worked for 5 years in the R&D department, and once that time, I worked on the multiple technologies like Java, C Sharp, Python, then R language. Also currently working on the AI project, artificial intelligence project on R language. Now, apart from that, I have worked on Selenium REST Assured for API automation, then Selenium for web automation, for Appium with Selenium for mobile automation, then JMeter for your load and performance, then AutoIT or AutoIT, whatever you said, for the desktop automation. And there are different technologies also, and worked on the majorly deployment and end-to-end cycles. Now, from my education background, I did my engineering in computers, and I have finished my MBA in international business as well as IT. So once I finish all my education, then I have started my career. And currently, apart from this, as a social reach, I have helped near about 2,200 plus people to learn the test automation, sir. Okay, to learn the test automation, and near about 50% of those, near about 1,100 plus people, that they got opportunity into a renowned organization. Now, a couple of those are also helping others to get this knowledge, and they're sharing their knowledge. So very happy to see that too. And I am very passionate about coding, and that is what one of my hobby. Now, what today I'm going to explain you is about a very important topic, that is what is a test automation, and what are the challenges that we can face in the test automation. If you can see this, so there are multiple challenges we can face in the test automation, along with when you plan to prepare your test automation document, or you can say the test plan document, then there is something which you need to think before starting your test automation document. If you can see on my screen, so there are multiple test automation challenges that we were facing. Like if you can see here, like the first challenge to prepare any of the test automation plan is a right tool selection. Okay, so when we talked about the right tool selection is very important. I'll explain this more in detail about this test tool selection. What are the parameters that we need to consider to select this? All those areas I'm going to explain more in detail. Now, along with that, we do have a skill set is one parameter to build your plan. Okay, so we do have the skill set is another which we required always to build any of automation plan, which is effective automation test plan, I can say. Same way you required the requirement management, something requirement change, something like your technical knowledge, you need the maintenance, you need integration, then you need to do some time management, your then system level cases, then your sprint management. with the right tester you need to select, plus your delivery you need to manage, plus you need to think about everything that you planned for the sprint that should be delivered. Same way about your feedback as well. So these are some of the challenges while we can talk about the test automation. Okay, now I can tell you, once those are done, then our first problem comes into the picture is what we need to do. So we need to think about our automation test lifecycle first before our planning. So if you can see here, this is the testing lifecycle. If you can see, I can show you here, this is my automation test lifecycle. Okay, in my automation test lifecycle, there are the multiple components, or we can say each will, which says a one parameter for building your testing lifecycle. Okay, so same way like knowledge transferring, then your test automation requirement, and important phase is this third phase, which we are going to be more in detail today. That is to prepare your automation test strategy as well as to prepare your automation test plan. Okay, so when we said this third phase where we can define the test plan as well as the test strategy, this is very important. Here we need to work and build our own techniques or our own tactics to prepare your test plan, which is effective, which you need to be present in front of the management so that anyone can be access that without any challenge, and there can be approval. We can say the pre-approval also is required for any of your automation test plan. But let's see one by one. We'll go with one of these steps. So with approval from your higher management too. Now I will just make this. Okay, if you wanted to see this about automation test lifecycle in more detail, I do have my video on automation test lifecycle as well. So this is the video where you can see already I have defined what is automation test lifecycle and more in detail. Now the first thing that I can go back and think about, I'll show you what are the areas that I'm going to think about the automation development plan. Now this is my plan document. So I'm going to share you some of the plan document. I'm going to share you the best practices that needs to be followed in industry, which is still missing in most of the organization, and that leads to the failure. Okay, so bear some time with me where I can share you not only this development plan. I am going to explain you what is this, then I am going to explain you what are the verifications in this. I'm going to explain you how mobile automation plan is built, and I'm going to explain you the high level plan we can share. So all those documents I'm going to explain you one by one. So bear some time with me. You can just listen it what exactly I wanted to say here. Okay, so now in recent times, like based on your agile methodologies has grown in popularity, and due to its undoubted imminence of your risk development and testing without enduring the quality of the software, the test automation in agile environment is one of the tedious now being pursued most to maintain agility and to minimize the human efforts. So automation is definitely one of the majority in the agile development nowadays. So any project, like nowadays each one of you are working on the agile projects. So in agile environment, the first thing and the important thing are always required is your the automation testing. Now when we talked about test automation in agile development, so automation is the critical component of your agile testing, and the significance of automation test cases lies in the fact that count of test cases at the system testing level will keep on increasing after each sprint. So whenever you finish any of your test case sprint, your test cases are increased day by day. And whenever a new functionality is also going to get added, and then the old code needs to be regressed to authenticate them as well. That means any new features comes into the picture, you need to re-authenticate what existing features are, and we need to regress those existing feature. Now, due to the time constraint, it is important to know what should be automated in best possible way to get good returns from the automation. Now, when I said I am going to start my automation test plan, the first comes is your design and analysis phase. But prior to design and analysis phase, we can tell in the automation phase, we can say as a pre-plan. We can say as a pre-plan. When we talked about pre-plan, automation can offer huge improvements in test efficiency and effectiveness, but many require a substantial investment into that. Not all programs and requirements should be automated. So before launching into an automated software test program, take a time to assess its value relative to the cost, not only in the short term, but especially in the long term, because most of the time the failure of your automation or your automation strategy is due to your thinking about a short term plan rather than on the long term plan. That's why what happened, most of the automation testers or in the most of the industry or most of the companies, people are creating multiple framework for different products, which is not the correct way, because you are spending lot of efforts by creating your own framework. Now, this return of investment or business case analysis does not require highly accurate and precise estimates, but does require a sound systems engineering and decision analysis approach. So even though if you wanted to do any of this, you can say your estimates, when you said we wanted to identify some of the estimates, definitely not precise estimates we are looking for, but we need the best analysis approach or decision approach by which you can provide our estimates. So I'm going to show you that one by one what approach that we can follow in our automation test processes. Now, once we can say, so the pre-planning phase will require some time. Okay, and in pre-planning, studying the facts of automation and learning about automation efforts performed on similar or related systems to better understand how the automated testing landscape applies on the specific system requirements. It will go considerably smoother if you have personal familiar with not only software testing but also your automated software testing. So that is a basic requirement when you start your planning. If you do not have these resources, fortunately there are organizations across many enterprises that are willing to help on this. Okay, but let's see. So I am going to show you one document for this first. So let me go back and share you one documentation here. So if you can see on my screen, this is one of the document which I can say a verification matrix. Okay, so this is one of the document which we can say a verification document. Now I told in just now before some time that I said, to do the re-estimation, that means to estimation, you should have something very concrete, your design or your design implementation or your tactics, by which you can get somehow near to your estimates, or you will get a very good estimates based on those. So if you can, go back, this is my application. I'll go back here in my application. Okay, let's take an example. This is one of my application. On this application, I have a normal basic flow that is on my registration form, where I can see a simple username, password, and the confirm password. Okay, so I can see these three fields. Now, what happened when we said this is my basic flow, but before that flow, we need to understand what is the prerequisites to do this. That means, let's say I do have only username, password, and I need to click on login so that I am successfully able to log in. But my flow says this username which I am able to log in and this password which I am successfully logged in is nothing but creating for one of the desktop application. Okay, I repeat one more time, guys. So what I said, the username and password, those are validated or able to logged in into this system, are always I can generate from one of the system I can always generate from one of the system, and that system is nothing but a desktop application. Okay, that system is nothing but a desktop application. Now when I said the system is a desktop application, I need to do my estimation. Now my current project is a web application. So if I can go back to my documentation, I'll go back to my documentation. What I said, the user and password which I am going to log in, those user and password I am going to create from one of my automated script application or desktop automated script application. Okay, so that username and password I am going to create from my desktop automated script application. Now what happened with that? So I have my manual expected results. That's mean this is my manual procedure. I have my step number, I have my procedure. That means I can say I wanted to have this step one. What my step one is saying, my step one is saying open desktop application and create user and password for login into automated script application. But what is my expected result? You can able to create a user and password for login into that application. Now what my automation detail item says, what my automation detail item says, so I can tell you one more time. When I said automation detail items, these are nothing but a verification for me. These are nothing but a verifications for me. So any automation tester, they needs to first mention the verifications. That means as an automation tester, I should aware what I need to do. So I need to verify whether desktop application is present. I need to see whether it says mandatory fields enter, password entered, confirm password entered, then create button is clicked, and I have created successfully my username and password. This is what my prerequisites, this is what my basic steps, what I can mention. Okay, once I can mention this, my next column says, do you think that location of automation detail item is implementation? So anywhere you are able to implement this. Do you think what verification you are talking about, do you think anywhere you are able to implement? So what I said in initially, no, this is my web application automation, so I cannot go on web application automation with all those features. So that's why I mentioned here not applicable. That's why I mentioned here a not applicable. When I say not applicable, that means these are not I'm going to automate. These steps I am not going to automate. But if you can see here, I am getting a very good information on basis of this. I am getting very good information on the basis of this. What next I can do? My next column says these are my feasibility. So always in the planning and the estimation, you need to identify your feasibility. You need to identify your feasibility of your documentation or your automated scripts. So when we talked about the feasibility, what feasibility says, do you think I can automate this? So there are multiple options I have mentioned. I said 1, that means it is automatable. 0, that means not automatable. When I mention the question mark, it says I need to do some research to identify whether it is automatable or not automatable. That means I can do some research, that means some investigation is required to identify that this step is possible to automate or not. Now, so as we said, this is desktop application. That's why what I did, I mentioned here 0, 0, 0, 0, because I said it is not automatable for me now, because I am going to see only those steps those are possible to automate. I'm going to do only those steps those are possible to automate. So guys, I'm going to show you one by one doc. Okay, there are multiple docs which I wanted to show you for the planning, so that you can understand each and every aspects of your automation test planning. Okay, so bear some time with me. It is very important to understand. Okay, there are multiple documents which I can showcase you, and that will help you to get exact planning of any of your automation project. Okay, that will help you also to present that in front of anyone. Okay, now when I said if this is not automatable, that means I said this is not automatable. Now what is automation items? I can say here, do you think this is implemented as of now? Answer is no. So that's why if this is not even automatable, so then I am not able to even implement it. So what I said, 0 says this is not yet started. That means not started is I am not yet started automation of this. Then I said 0.25 is 0.25% is completion, and like 1 and 0.5 and 0.75. So this is how it is defined. So based on this, we can get the final estimate of this test cases. Okay, that is what we need to mention in our plan somewhere. Okay, now this is one of the steps to log in into that web application. So first step was only I need to create a username and password from my desktop application. So I said this is not possible. Now I can go to the next step. What is my next step? My next step says enter the valid username password and in the automated script application, and you are successfully able to log in then. So you need to simple enter your username, you need to simple enter your password, click on sign in, and you are able to successfully log in into the system. Now what you can see, this is only second step that I can enter username password. In my third step I can enter only login button. When we talked about automation is not only I can write driver.find element by ABC or by login button dot click. So that is not the way. We need to do most of the time every detail step identification of any of your test cases. This is how I am going to show you for estimation and for planning. Now let's say I'm saying here this is my login page. So I first validate whether my login page is displayed or not. Then I can validate whether we have the title, then username is displayed and it is present, then password is present, displayed, and then I can enter something in the password and enter something into a username. And then I can able to click on the login, and once I logged in, then I can validate whether I've successfully logged in or not. All those are my steps. Now what I said, do you think I can validate these steps? Verify login screen displayed. So I said this step is automation currently feasible? Answer is yes, it is 100% feasible. I said it is automatable, that means 100% feasible. I can validate whether I am on the correct login page or not. I can validate whether I am on the correct login page or not. So that it is very easy for me to identify whether it is automatable or not, so that I can mention here. I said this is my first step. On my first step, I validated, okay, this is my first step, and I said, yes, this is automatable. Now, if this is automatable, now what is the current status of this implementation? So I said it is currently 100% completed. What I said, it is currently 100% completed. So once it is completed, that means it shows you the percent of completion. Same way, if you can see for the multiple steps, what I said till this point, it is 100% completion. But once I came to this field, I said, do you completed this enter username field? Answer is no. As of now, I have finished till 0.75. That means 75% of this step is finished, because I just identify the locators, but I have added my other methods but not yet entered, because I am writing my common function. So that's why it is not yet implemented. So based on all this calculations, what happened, if I can go to, there is another tab in the same document. If you can see, there is another tab in the same document. What I can do here, I'll go back and I show you. So I said, this is my regression suite. Okay, when I say CM, that means my regression manual test suite. If I can say FM, that is my feature manual test, and if I can say AO, that means it is 100% automation test. Okay. Now, what I said, I can simply check here is that what is the test case name? I said it's a login. How many items, that means we need to automate? 17. What is items here? So I said all these verifications are nothing but items for me. If you can see, there are 17 count. If you can see, there are 17 counts of these verifications. I do have these 17 verifications which I need to automate. I go back here. Out of those 17, how many are feasible to automate? How many are feasible to automate? Once I go back here, I can see how many are feasible to automate. That means those who are having only one, that means which is a possible automatable, those are feasible to automate for me. Those which are mentioned 0, those are not feasible to automate for me. So if I can select all 1, then I can get the number as 11. I can go back and check here. So out of 17, only feasibility is 11. I can say out of 17, only feasible is 11. Now the trick here is, when we most of the time give our plan, automation plan, we give our plan. In most of the industry, people are giving the plan on this 17. People are giving their automation plan based on this 17. That's why they got a lot of escalation, lot of failures, because they don't even understand the 6 items were not feasible to automate. So why extra efforts they are taking here? So what we mentioned, we said only 11 are feasible to automate. What I mentioned, only 11 are feasible to automate out of this 17. If 11 are feasible, then I can consider only those 11 are 100% feasibility. That means my automation plan are based on these 11 test scenarios. Okay, so that means I said based on all other areas, I can say those 11 are 100% for me now. So I said those are 100% for me now. So based on this, I can plan. Based on this, I can prepare my automation plan. Okay, so we'll go one by one of these all steps. Don't worry. Now I can say this is my 100% here. Now when I said 100%, this is 100%. Now how many currently items are automated? If I can go back there, I can see how many are 1, 4 and 1, and 1 is 75. So I can mention here 4.75. That means it says out of feasible to automate, that means out of this feasible to automate, how many percentage are able to automate? That means out of 17, the feasibility is 65% of this test case can be 100% automate. 65% of this test case can be 100% automate. And then out of this 65%, what is current percent of automated? So current percent of automated is 28%. That is, this 28 is again this 4.75 against this total. Then I said out of feasibility, that means out of 100%, what is current my percent of automation? So I said out of this 100%, I have finished 43% of automation, so that I can send these results to anyone, or any one of your manager, lead, or anyone can see this data and they can saw and they observe that what is the current percent of automation. What is the current percent of automation? Now think this is only for one test case, what I have mentioned here. Okay, what I have mentioned here is this is only a one test case. Now let's consider you have the 100 test cases, and so that this all test cases will consider as your 100%, and this percentage will consider what is the percent of completion. This is how we can example on or we can work on your automation plan. This is my first step. Now my first step that says I need to conduct a research on test program and automated software test. So the first step always to determine if the automated approach makes sense, which takes the goals, objective and requirement for system under test, and look for your logical opportunities to apply your automation. If you are in the early unit testing phase of your project, then you can say developing software for components of the complex system, the test that would need to be executed only once and may not make sense to automate always. Okay, so that is my, I can conduct my research. Now I can, second thing that I can understand my environment. I can try to understand my environment over here. Now what I can do to understand my environment, now automation efforts have a better chance of success when there is not only sufficient capability but also support across those organizations. Now automation in testing is not the typical mindset of most of the organization, and one theme across all the organization or your government or commercial is always we can say the culture may be an important and possibly only those test cases or regression test cases we need to automate, but which is wrong. Okay, but which is a wrong. So what we need to do first is we need to identify the environment and we need to identify what exactly we need to test. That is what comes under my planning. Then the third comes under my pre-plan is access manpower and skill set requirements. Now let's say I am saying I do have all the resources, those are aware about the VB script, and I have started my planning based on the execution of or I can say that my planning is based on Java and Selenium. So there is a huge training cost involved between this. If my resources knows only VB script or on the QTP tool they work, and I have planned to work on Selenium plus Java, then there is a huge training cost is Empower. So there often a distinct difference in skill sets and experience between the software testers and the automators. Now today's tool testers with little software development experience can effectively learn to automate some of the aspects of your testing otherwise done manually. Now, however, we can think a robust, streamlined, and maintainable and reusable automation solution often requires a significant investment in software coding as well as in development, and that will grow fully independent and reusable automation test scripts. So that is what we can say we need to identify our skill set requirement first. Then we say we need to determine potential benefits from this automation. So let's say what are the benefits? So I'll count down some of the benefits from this automation are like increase the coverage for lines of code tested, then increase the coverage of expected operational paths and the use cases. I can say manpower savings over the manual testings and especially on the repetitive testing like your regression and other ability. Then we can say ability to scale with multiple users and environments and perform high load and boundary testing. Those are also one of my automated testing part. Then I can say ability to test, force to focus energies on high priority, high risk areas, better output data, then higher defect discovery, then greater delivery software quality, shorter time to field system, then continuous testing, continuous integration, reusability of your automated scripts. All those are the potential benefits from automation. Those are also you need to identify or mention into your test automation plan. Then we can say how much cost of the automation efforts. Very important, and based on this there are either approval or based on this there are either rejection of your automation plan. Okay, when we talked, so now what is the cost that is involved? Now there are both direct and indirect cost associated with your automation project. Okay, now representative direct cost include your software licensing and training, hardware and middleware components for the automated test framework, like your cloud and network services. All those are your the direct cost. Okay, now when we talked about indirect cost, thought of as like hidden or unexpected time required to automate. Okay, so that means some of the time manual testing function is not completed, then we cannot time to collaborate across many functions. Then we say we can require more time to keep management informed. These are all indirect costs. Now cost should be viewed through the short term versus long term both. When we talked about the cost, it should be see from the both the way, like short term and versus the long term. Now we need to decide the based on this expected return of investment. So I am spending huge amount in this planning. I am spending this much of time or estimation based on my, first of all, I did my best on this estimation. I can get the number. Let's say I got the number, like I need near about 1,000 hours of development efforts to build one whole or to automate whole module. So based on that, I can do my planning. Now I can write something for you guys so that you can understand. So the main feature of your test plan document. So I can write one by one. So first is your test matrix. First is your test matrix. Then we do have, we can say the monitor your test design, okay, or test programs. You can monitor, I'll show you everything, a test programs, I can say. Then I can say a defect tracking and reporting is again you need to mention defect tracking, how many defects are identified and how many defects are reported by the automation testing and everything. Then we can say our configuration management. When we say a configuration management, it is nothing but your CI/CD, some other like some other implementation infrastructure. All those comes into the picture here. Then your test execution, test development, then your test execution, then test execution. What is your test execution into this? Then your test analysis design. I show you how we do the test analysis design, so you can walk through with my that video. I'll not take more time here to define those. Those important thing we need to mention each roles and responsibility of your most of your resources. That is also one of the part. Then important, I'll go more in detail about this, that is test tool introductions or identification, I can say. Okay, then we can say the decision to automate test. Then I can say the decision to automate your test. So why I said we need to take the decision to automate test. Now let's say currently I can see here 17 and 11, and if this test case is executed once in a quarter, if this test case is executed only once in a quarter, so do you think we can go and automate this test case? Guys, you can answer on the YouTube live. There is no problem if you want to answer. So do you think if this test case is executed in quarter only once, then do you think we need to automate this test case? It is saving only some point of time. That means not more than 10 minutes or 15 minutes of time. Is that correct? Is that correct? So when I said, if I can say this test case is executed only once in a quarter. So very good answer, Kiran. So do you think we can automate this test case? No. So this is what I am talking about here on this decision to automate your test. This is how any of your team lead or automation test manager needs to take the decision. On this area, they needs to take the decision that we need to automate the test or we no need to automate this test. Okay, so this decision I am talking about. And now I can go back here. Now what I said, I do analyze my manual test and overall feature and understand what are the test cases that I am going to test it, and how do we consult manual testers or developers for more in details about this. Then I said I need to prepare that analysis. I need to prepare my spreadsheet. What spreadsheet? If you can see here, I need to prepare my verification, I said. Okay, so I need to prepare my verification, I said. So verification is one of my key important area that will help me to automate any of the test case in detail. And if you can follow this approach, believe me, first time you can see this is a very lengthy way, but once you started implementing within your actual code or actual project, then you come to know the benefit of this approach. Okay, and I'm telling you, most of the companies, they are not following this. That's why they are failing into the test automation. What they do, they said in 1 month I need to automate 1,000 test cases. Just sit and start automation, and once after finishing that, then you can see there are thousands of hours of maintenance into that scripts. We can found 1,000 of hours of maintenance, and that's why we can say this is not the way. So that's why we can say first we can identify the verification. Once we identify the verification, then we can mention what is expected results. Then we can send that verification sheet. In the planning, we can send this verification sheet to the manual test team members. Listen it carefully, guys. This test we are sending to the manual test team members, and we are asking them to please review our verification, because they know the system better than the automation tester. Most of the time that happens. So we just ask them, just walk through with all those verification, and do let us know if there is any steps that is missing from this verification. If anything that is missing from this verification, then we can fix that and we can close that. So that is what I'm talking about here in the planning. So this planning document hold everything. Okay, now I have another very important area, that is a automation ID. Now when I talked about this automation ID, if you can think that we are working on automation test project, if you are thinking we are working on the automation test project, and what happened in the automation test project, that automation is based on most of the time on your locators. Automation is based on most of the time on your locators. So if I can go back here, if I can see here, I can see this is what my unique identifier, that is name equals name. So what we do is, I'll tell you what we can do here is, as an automation tester, we need some unique way. So what I can do, I can ask any of the team members that just set this as an automation ID, and I can say this is the username. See what I did here. I said I am going to ask a very important thing, that is I need a unique attribute to each and every web element. I am going to ask the developers that in my planning I'll mention this is what, first of all, my prerequisites. Okay, in these things I'll mention these are my prerequisites. What I can say, I said I need this unique identifier, that means unique attributes to every single element. This will not take more than half an hour for any developer to add those. This will not take more than half an hour for any developer to add those. So if they will add those, then that will help you to build this, particularly the maintenance free automated suite. That will help you to build this maintenance free automated test suite. What happened, most of the organization, we can see the multiple elements with the same attribute and with the same name. Then people may ask you the question in interview, how to identify dynamic way. Definitely those are the question in interview, but in the way, if you wanted to reduce the maintenance with this way which I am talking about, near about 90% of maintenance is reduced in your automation test scripts. And based on that, we can simply ask any one of the people, or we can say the developer, that please add such attributes into our code base. If they can add, then it is easy for us that we can write our XPath, we can write our CSS or any other, or the attribute, or with the get attribute, or any other methods using this important commands, and we'll get it. Okay, so this is how we can say we will use it. Now I can go back one more time. Now when I said we can request that, so I'll go back, and how to request that I'll show you. Now let's say I have my login page. Okay, so now let's say I'm showing you multiple documents. That's why I said, guys, just bear some time with me. You can understand whole flow of your planning, so that everyone can, this is a foolproof planning, so that will never fail for any automation processes. That will never fail for any automation project. That will give you a one stand ahead compared to others. Okay, so now what I'm saying, okay, now what I'm saying is, let's say this is one of my automation tags which I'm talking about now. What I ask here, I ask, this is my username field, this is my password field, for example, this is my username field, this is my password field, and login and all others. I said I need the automation ID with this name. I clearly mention this is my requested automation ID with this name. For this password, I am requesting with this name. For login, I am requesting with this name. For copyright, for legal and agreement and all other, we are adding with this name. Now once I can add, I can simply mention currently it has a tag input. Okay, and it has some different value. Now I want in this way. Now I can say, do you think this is the unique way recommended? Answer is yes. Now the question, do you think any development estimation is required on that? Do you think any estimation is required on that? This is what the next question. If you can think there is any estimation required on that, then we can say just mention that estimation, and that comes into your planning, and that comes into their dev points estimation. That always developer says I need to spend these many efforts on particularly to add those automation IDs requested by the automation team members. Then I said, do you think it is ready by the developer team and it is deployed on your new system? So just mention that one of the columns, so that they can say yes, yes, yes. So these are only review, these are only the runtime review that we can do. These are only runtime review that we can do. Once we can do these runtime reviews, we'll get all those information over here only. So I'm currently I'm showing you only for one login page. You can do this for the multiple way. Okay, now so this is how a one way by which we can reduce 90% of maintenance. So I'm showing you one by one way of your automation planning. Now I go back one more time. Now this is what my design and analysis and everything is done. Now comes my implementation phase. Now comes my implementation phase. When I say implementation phase, what is the implementation phase? So implementation phase, I can show you in the implementation how it works. So if you worked on any of the framework, let's take an example of any of the framework. If you worked on, for example, page object model framework, I'll take the example of page object, though you guys are all aware about page object. So how implementation starts? The implementation always starts from you are adding first locator, then you are adding actions on top of those locators, then you are adding a verification on those locators, then you are adding your test. So what you can do, you will first identify all the unique locators, you add into the page factory or page object model, any approach you can use, you can add your locators there. Then whatever locators you identify, based on that, you simply add its action on top of those locators. Once that actions is done, that actions will be called from your verifications, which verification we had written here. Okay, that's why I'm showing you which verification is written here. So that's why when you completed that verification, you mark it here 1. See how it is correlated. Okay, now see how it is correlated with each one of these areas. Okay, now when I said it is 1, that means this verification is implemented. That's the how we can go in the way. Then that verification call from your test. Now whole this process is called my implementation. Whole this process is called my implementation. Now when I say execution, now this is my execution process. Now this is my execution process. When I say previously that was my implementation, now I do have my execution. Now can somebody wants to answer how execution starts? Anyone wants to answer how execution starts here? Because implementation is done, now we need to start with execution. So do you think any approach or any thing that we can follow here in execution? So always guys, your execution starts from your test. Then test calls your verifications. Verification calls your actions, and actions calls internally to your locators. Okay, so your locators, actions, verifications, and test. So execution, while you do the execution of those tests, that is totally reciprocal or opposite to your implementation. Always your execution starts from test, then goes to verifications, then goes to your actions, and then goes to your locators. Okay, once that is done, this is how I can say I am talking about here in my implementation phase. So I can use my best practices, which I can mention here. I can show that to anyone. I can mention these are my best practices I'm going to plan in my implementation phase. Okay, now all this design analysis and phase, all those are implemented here. Now important that comes here is documentation. Okay, now importantly that comes here your documentation. I can go back here now one more time. Now let's take an example of this mobile automation test plan. Okay, now let's take an example of this mobile automation test plan. If you can see in this mobile automation test plan, this is a simply, once I logged in on the menu panel, I wanted to identify how many links are there. I simply wanted to validate how many links are there. So what I write, I can simply say it first, I wanted to set the user profile, then I wanted to see user profile image page, then I wanted to see application feedback feature, I wanted to see the contact support, I wanted to see the logout. And all those are my one of the features within my menu panel. Now, currently these are only high level steps. If you can see here, open my automated script app, go to the dashboard, click on user menu items should get here. You can see if you can get email ID, location, then you can find same from the GET API and compare both the report. That means whatever you can see on UI and whatever you are validating from your API, you are validating both into this test. This is very high level, but for this high level implementation, we need to implement that into this detailed verification. For this high level implementation, we need to go this, every step has some detailed verifications. That means I do have only go to dashboard and click on menu icon. For go to dashboard, what I will check first, whether dashboard is present or not, whether it is enabled or not. If it is enabled and whether it is displayed, if it is present, then only I can validate whether menu icon is present or not. If menu icon is present and if it is enabled, then only I will click. Here it looks a single line, but this single line in future get more in detail. This single line in future get more in detail. That's why in the automation will not lose anything. We can go in detail and we can find every single objects from any of the single steps. So most of the time what people were doing in the automation planning, they just write the simple high level. They said, yes, I am done, I am done, I am done. But where is the maintenance? Where is your automated automation IDs? Where are your verifications? Where are your percent of completion? Where are your summary? Did you consider what is your 100% of your automation? Did you consider what is your not 100% of automation? So on the basis of what you are providing your estimates in the planning. These are all the challenges people are facing because this documentation, the important part is again and always missing from every single automation project. Okay, this is missing from every single automation project. Now what I wanted to tell you, if you guys can try to implement within your project and try to project that into the interview, believe me, everyone wanted to understand what exactly this process is, how you guys follow this process, what are the best practices you are following. So if once you try to explain those best practices in front of the interviewer, you have additional advantage compared to others based on these practices, or we can say the processes. And you can clearly mention, I am preparing the plan based on all these practices or based on all this planning documentation. Then only I am able to create my plan. So that's how we can complete my documentation here. Also, sometimes what we do, we can simply mention our technical depth also. That means I am thinking, let's say I have the application, I'm going with the same verification sheet here. What I said here, I have this is my desktop application, but currently I said it is not feasible to automate. But in future, if I have added my auto IT or auto 8 code base, then it is 100% of feasible to automate. That means that time this becomes automatable. So what I mean to say, can we make that as a technical depth for the future references? The question to you guys. Do you think we can make that as a technical depth for the future references? Do you think it is possible? That when we are mentioning that this is currently not feasible to automate, but in future we can automate or we can think to automate those. We can think to automate those. Then do you think we can mention those as a technical depth in your planning? So when you mention those things into your plan document, that means you can say, I have all those things into my planning, that these are my technical depth for this particular module which I have automated. These are my technical depth once I have finished my test automation for XYZ project. These are my technical depths for this project. Once we can have this implementation in place, then we can start this technical depths to be reduced. So in planning, you need to mention your technical depth also. Okay, which is missing from most of the projects. Which is missing from most of your projects. Okay, so people are simply mention, no, I do have all those, I simply added those, I have there is no technical depth because currently it is not feasible, so I said I'm not going to automate that. What in future? So in future, for the future itself, you are planning it currently. You are saying, I am planning it on the current day. I am saying this may be a technical depth in the future, in current way, but I can manage this in future. This is what my planning is. This is what my planning is. I said I have all those objectives that I cannot keep anything. I'm not considering in my planning with the current project. I'm thinking about some of the technical depths. Those will be covered in the future as well. Okay. Now what I said, I can go back here and then I said transfer to the manual tester phase. This phase nobody mentioned anywhere in any of your particular the projects. Okay, this phase nobody mentioned into their automation planning. What this phase means, let's say we have involved in automation every stage the manual test team members. If you can see, we have added if you can see, we have added every manual tester team members into every stage of our testing. So if you can see, I have prepared this verification and sent this verification sheet to the manual test team members for the review. Okay, I sent this to the manual test team members for review. Once manual test team members are review this code, then they will send it back to you. Once they will review this, they will send it back to you with their review comments. Finally, once you got the approval from their side, from the manual team, and you'll get some your higher level of estimate, then what happened? If after some days, if you executed and some bug occur into the application, and the manual team test team member says, no, this is missed from the automation. So that time they can't say this is missed from the automation. Why? Because this verification is already shared with them for review. This verification is always or already shared with the manual test team members to proceed. They can just walk through with this team, they can walk through with this, and if they provide their final comments, then this is approved from the manual team members. So that is missed from the manual team members if you can miss any of the verification. Okay, so this is how we can say one of the best practices. Now I said in my document, I wanted to transfer this test automation, that is my manual tester phase. How do I automate and transfer to the manual testing members? So for that we do have another document. So let me show you. Let's say I'm considering my this registration page. This is my registration form which I wanted to automate now. Okay, once I wanted to automate this registration page, the first stage of my planning, that means when I said I wanted to automate this test case of registration page, the first test or my first stage is I wanted to design the verification and my automation IDs for automation tester. My first step says I wanted to design this verification scenario and automation IDs. That means I can create this verification sheet and I can create this automation ID sheet. I can create both these sheets. That is my first step of this test automation. Then I said, what is my plan start date? I said, what is my plan start date, by when I can start my designing, when I can start requesting the automation IDs to the developers. So I can start on, for example, XYZ date, and this is what my end date. Okay, and you can mention your plan and actual both the dates so that you can showcase this in front of your management that I was planning to complete to get this done or to get this done by 15th, but developer not provided me the automation ID. That's why actual completion date is 25. So actual completion date is 25, so that you can mention it very clearly that there is a 10-day delay from the development team member. You can mention here the dependency that dev team. So here, see how I mention. So I can simply mention here the dev team, the dependency on the development team's response. So they were not respond. That's why we are not able to automate that. So that's why we are not able to complete our automation ID. Now once we said the second phase. What is second phase? Once you finish your test IDs and or automation IDs and your verification scenarios, you can send, see here, you can create your review process and you can send this verification scenario to manual testers and other automators or modification those test cases. That means you can send this to any of the manual testers and other automation testers too. Okay, now when we said if you can share this to the manual testers as well as your automation testers, those can be completed, again my plan date complete end date. But if you can see who are involved in this, so whole team, So if you are working on XYZ project, your whole XYZ project team members, that is your manual team members and automation team members, are involved into this. Okay, so this is how we can say, this is how we can see here the how manual team members we can involve in the planning. Then once we request this to the developers, and then we anyone, like here my resources are Kunal and Bhushan, who is going to do this, and by when they can complete, these are the date. When I said here my finalize the design, and I can say Mahesh and someone else who can or Garvita who can finish this, finalize the design. Then when I said breaking the design and doing a detail estimation, then this is nothing but one of my team members, like they can identify Sunita and Milind, they can completed this. So this is how we can process, or we can do one by one steps. Then I start my coding implementation, which may need some of the type. Okay, I can say this may take, for example, 5 days. So Milind and Bhushan is going to implement this coding implementation. Then I said code review. So Mahesh is going to do the code review, and these are the dates in this we can do. Then once you implement all this code review and everything is done, then what, we can just demo that automated test scripts to the manual testing members. Okay, then we can automate code review, or we can just provide a get demo to the manual testing members, and manual testing members will identify this, and then they will give their sign off. They said okay, this is all okay for us, or they can just provide you some of the feedback that this steps is missing and everything. You simply do that fixes also, and finally once this whole test case is automated, I can simply hand off this test case to the manual testing members. So I can give that test case to the manual testing members. I have handed over that test case to the manual testing members, so that from the next build onwards, this test case will be executed by the manual testing members, so that automation testers can be focused only on the new features. And they can only focus not only on the new features, they can also work on the estimation or the new code implementation or the maintenance. These are all based on the current requirement of that project. Okay, now this is how one of the high level process. I show you another document which we can help you in the planning. Now I'll go back one more time to this planning. Now this stage is finished, and then in the sprint completion phase, what I will do, I will give that snapshot of all these record, how much percentage complete, what is my the things, how many test cases are finished, what I need to mention, all these into the sprint review I can showcase. So in sprint review, what is important in the sprint review, that summary, this summary is important. I said based on this, I am planning for this sprint, I need to finish 12% of automation, but I have finished only 10% overall automation. So then I can showcase why this 10%, because of these particular comments. These are because of these particular notes. So you can show why there are the delay of this -2%, and you can mention the comments of this -2%. If you can think you are supposed to finish the 12%, but you have finished here a 14%, that means you can take additional 2% from the next sprint as well. So you can mention that you will get very good response from the development team members, and then you can start working on that, and the new feature from the next sprint you can started working on that. So this is how your sprint review showcase. So nobody can answer you the question, even in your sprint, even in your planning, even any of your documentation, when you follow all these processes. Okay, so that you can say very clearly, based on all these my practices, this is what the current state of my automation. Based on this this dependency, because you mentioned the dependency also here. You mentioned the dependency also here. Okay, now based on this dependency also, you can mention like I can say, like in this COVID pandemic nowadays, people are getting sick. Okay, so that is no in nobody's hand, but yes, that is happening. So if somebody is, we are planning in initially like 10 days of work he's going to do, but 2 weeks of his home quarantine. So what he will do? So in the 10 days, those whole test cases are blocked. That means we can clearly mention that dependency, due to that unexpected dependency, my test cases cannot be automated. Okay, so if you can think very high level how we are planning in automation development plan, we can showcase this, that we can show all this basic documentation to any of the team members. Okay, now now what I can suggest is something new. Okay, now let's see these are all interrelated, guys. Okay, the document that I'm showing you guys are all interrelated. Now what I can say, I have finished my documentation. Now once I finish my documentation, I need to do something else that I have already mentioned, how to identify and compare the tools. This is one of my phase. Okay, now the number of types of tools available for any of the automation testing can be overwhelming. Okay, and each phase of automated test program potentially has the requirement for the different tool or set of tools that may need to integrate it with the disparate collection of tools. Now the goal in the planning phase is to understand the general capabilities of relevant tools and a down select to the few promising candidate that will fit your workforce. That means on your skill set, that is we already did in our pre-planning, and your timing and your desired level of automation rigors. Now through this assessment or of needs will result in a multiple tool selection. So we already did this multiple actions by which we can identify this is what I am going, this is what the processes I am following. Based on that, I can come up with the multiple tool as a solution. Now begin with those tools that your team uses and feels comfortable with, and also you can efficiently use for the upcoming automation, and these tools will have higher priority due to the associated shorter learning curve and better overall automation probability of success. Because if your team members are not capable enough to work on any of the tool, they are not interested to, or they are not having capability to work on that, then you have huge chances of failure. That's why what I said, the tools will have higher priority due to the associated shorter learning curve, because people are aware of that, and better overall automation probability of success. So always your tool selection is one of the important and possible the planning objective we need to think. Now we need to think some of the solutions also, like some of the measures we need to keep in mind whenever we consider any of the possible tools solution. That first is the measure is, are the types of test modular and capable of being shared across application domains? That means if I have working in banking domain and the same organization in insurance, some of they have their desktop application and other application, web application and API. So we wanted to think about this. So do you think this is a test modular? Then does that tool use the common scripting language like Java or VBScript or Python or JavaScript, and which is your team members are aware about? And where is this testing or acquisition lifecycle can be automated? That means, do you think these tools can be helpful, or the acquisition we do have some issues? That means in support. Nowadays we are selecting very basic tools like your Selenium and all those. So those are not tools, those are an API. Then think, what operating system does your API or tool support? Then think, what is the ease of use and how big the learning curve for effectively automate? Then you can think, can the team be reasonably expected to efficiently use this tool? And does it have the any GUI capture, that is replay, that is record and play, or any programmer interface API, or you have any GUI, like we have the Selenium as an API, like QTP has an, or LeanFT has an GUI, on that way I'm talking about. Now, how responsive the vendor of that tool? If it is an open source, definitely you need to think about the online support. If it's a vendor or somebody as a paid, then you need to think about those things from their side. Okay. Now these are the basic things which we need to think about this. Now we can think how to determine this automation needs. Now, automated software testing has many definition and many interpretation, and depending on those program and stopping, we to have the quite complex taking the testing years to develop the right automation framework. So that's why this planning is very important, and based on this planning, you can take such a basic decisions to continue. Okay, now so I'll show you one more time those areas, and then simply we said this is my design and analysis, implementation, then documentation, then I have the transfer phase, and then I have to showcase phase. Okay, these are my important phase of these things. Now what I will tell you, I can stop it here today, guys. Now thank you so much for joining this session. What I would requested each one of you, if you like this session, please click on the like. If you dislike, you can dislike this session, and if you have any particular comments, then please comment on this session. You can follow me on LinkedIn also by searching automated script on LinkedIn, and we do have very good reach over there. So thank you so much one more time for joining this session. I'm going to come up with something new in the next Saturday again. So thanks again, and have a good evening. Bye.